Okay, so for now, I think our data model is done. Like I said, we can maybe later on add some more attributes or even add another table or two. But like I said, it's going to be very simple. I know I'm repeating myself, but I just want to make that clear. Also, I don't have any script or plan whatsoever. I'm just doing this off the cuff. So, okay, so let's actually translate that into SQL and create the tables in our database. For that, we're going to go into Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio and create the table via a query. We could also use the table designer that is included in Management Studio, excuse me, but we're not going to do that. We're going to actually write the SQL ourselves for educational purposes. First, we need to tell SQL what database we're going to use, and it's going to be the one we just created called speedrun database. So let's create the table. Hold on, let's have a quick look at it again. Let's create the player table first because it's so simple. Okay, create table player, and you don't need these delimiters here. These open and close bracket delimiters, but you can use them in MS SQL or T-SQL to delimit your identifiers, mostly because it makes you it enables you to do something like this. So now the table would actually be called the player with a white space in it, but we don't want that. Usually I use those delimiters, yeah, because I just tend to do that. I think it looks more clean. Create table player, and it's going to have an ID, which is an integer, and it can't be null, and it's going to be the primary key, and it's going to be, well, yeah, it's going to be an identity, which means in MySQL that would be an auto increment. So it just makes sure to, every time we insert a new record into this table, it automatically creates an ID value by just incrementing the last one by 1 by default. We can also specify the step size and stuff, but we don't need that. We just want to make sure that every time we insert a player, they're automatically assigned an ID. Okay, let's go ahead. Gamer tag. It's going to be of type nvarchar, and now we can specify a size for the data type. So basically we can say it can't be longer than, let's say, 80 characters. This is just, basically it's just optimization. So the only reason we restrict it to 80 characters is that we don't store unnecessarily large data. I don't think anyone should have a gamer tag that is longer than 80 characters. So yeah, that's fine. And it can't be null. For now, that's it. So let's execute that. I don't actually need to mark it first. Okay, commands completed successfully, and to prove that, we're going to run a select query on it. If I highlight this, if I highlight this part of the SQL specifically and click execute, it will only run, well, the highlighted part. Yeah, so that's our table. It's a very, very complex and large table with a lot of data in it. It barely fits on my screen. I'm just kidding, of course. So yeah, let's insert some test data there so that we can actually have something that we can retrieve from the database later on. So let's insert into this database, insert into this table, insert into player. Hold on, I need to check something. Okay, I'm back. We need to insert something into this table. And currently the only thing that we need to insert is the gamer tag, because the ID is an auto increment or an identity. So the only thing we need to specify is the gamer tag. So let's say, I don't know, Lucky Goodrich 90. And actually in Transact-SQL or MS SQL, you can list more than one set of values. So I'm going to do that here. You can just delimit them or just separate them with a comma. And let's say Inferno Boy 47. And let's, for good measure, add another player, and his name is going to be the ultimate player. Yeah, that's fine. Let's run this specific part, execute. Yeah, okay, 3 rows affected, and I'm going to have a look. There we go. We have our 3 players. Okay, so that's fine. I'm going to actually save this script. Maybe I can attach it, or maybe put a link in the description to it or something. Okay, quick cut there. I actually do a lot more cuts than I originally planned for this video, but this is so unprepared that I need to edit some parts out, otherwise it would be horrible to watch. Okay, so let's create a new table, and I'm actually going to do that in a new script. Let's go. Yeah, so the next one is going to be the game table. ID, name, release date, and publisher are the attributes that we're going to need. Let's make sure the right database is used, and create the table game. Which also has an ID of type integer, which can't be null, and it's a primary key. And is it automatic? Is it auto increment, or do we specify it ourselves? Let's say it doesn't have an auto increment. And it has a name. Let's restrict that to, I don't know, 100 characters. And it can't be null. What else? I think it was the release date and the publisher, of course. Yeah. Publisher also be 100, and the release date, and it's going to be of type datetime, and it can't, oh yes, actually it can be null, because sometimes we may not know that. And I think that's it. Create the table real quick, make sure it exists. Yes, it does. And insert some data into it. Did it just say data? Data. Let's insert some data. Do you say data or data? Write it in the comments and make sure I know which one it is. Okay. Insert into game ID and name and publisher and release date. Actually, I could omit this if I'm going to insert all of the attributes anyway, but what the heck. So the game with ID 1, well, let's actually start with ID 100 for no obvious reason. It's going to be Super Mario World. It's published by Nintendo, of course. Whoops. Nintendo. And when the heck was Super Mario World released? I would say 1995, I want to say, or earlier. I'm going to go with 1995. When we say release date, we mean the actual date of the first release. So basically the Japanese release. I'm going to Google that real quick just to make sure it's accurate. Hold on a second, I'm going to edit that out. Holy schmauzau, I couldn't have been more wrong. I was off by 5 years. But okay, this is not a video on video game trivia, so whatever. Let's go back into SQL Management Studio, and we're going to have to put it in a format that SQL can parse to a date. 1990, 11, and yeah. Let's make sure that works. Okay, that's perfect. And there we have it. Okay, let's insert another game. 2 games will do for now. Actually, let's make it 3, because I have one particular game in mind. Hold on. Okay, sorry. It's going to have ID 101, and it's going to be Super Metroid. It's also published by Nintendo, and I have no idea when it was released. Let's Google that real quick. Okay, so Google says it was March 19th, 1994. There we go. Okay, so for good measure, I added another game, or I'm in the process of adding another game, which is Final Fantasy VII. Let's actually make that say, I don't know if people speedrun Final Fantasy VII. I would assume that some do, but that's not the point. So Final Fantasy VII, Square Enix, and in this case we do not know the release date. I could Google that as well, but it's to demonstrate that, you know, sometimes it may not be known to the database. Yeah, insert this, and let's have a look. There we go. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to create a table to store the actual speedruns. Create table, speedrun, has an ID, and what else? I already forgot. It has a foreign key to the player and to the game, a time and a record date. Let's do the record date first. and then the time. See, the delimiters are also handy when the name or when the identifier coincidentally matches with a reserved keyword, like in this case. So we can use those brackets as a delimiter to make sure it is recognized as an identifier and not a type. Time, and it was a big int, and it can't be null, otherwise it would be pointless. And now we need player ID, which can't be null, and is going to be a foreign key that references the player table using the ID attribute. And also we're going to need a game ID, which is also a foreign key that references the game table using the ID attribute. And I think that's it, right? There we go. Command's completed successfully. The reason why this is underlined and marked as a syntactical error is because I haven't refreshed IntelliSense yet. If I press Control Shift and R, there we go. We no longer see that curly red line. Now we see one here, and that's because it says create table speedrun, and we already created a table called speedrun. Okay, so that's it for our tables. You will notice that they don't show up here, but that's simply because I haven't refreshed yet. Oh, sorry. Of course, it's in the tables folder. And here they are, our 3 tables. And that should be it for our data model. Okay, so our data model is done, but we're going to need some test data in the speedrun table as well. So we have something to retrieve from the database later on in the code. So let's actually insert some data into that. I know that I don't have to use the use statement all the time, but I'm just going to make sure. Insert into speedrun. And we're going to say game ID, player ID, record date and time, and the values are, remember, number 100 was Super Mario World. We have 3 players in our database. This is going to be for player number 1. The date is going to be, I don't know, 2018, December 1st, I don't know. For the last attribute, the time, we actually need the time in ticks, and a quick way to find out the ticks for a particular time span is to just go to .NET-Fiddle.net, which is an online compiler, create a time span object here, pass the values to the constructor. 0 is the days, 1 is the hours, minutes, seconds, and we're going to print out the number of ticks. And that is the number that we're looking for. This is just one way to do that. I might as well have gone into Visual Studio, create a new console application, but that's too much overhead for that, I think. So I'm just going to use this online compiler to figure out the number of ticks. for this specific time span. Okay, there we go. Let's create another one for the second player who played Super Metroid in 2017, October 15th, and just one more so that the third player that we created also has a speed run. He also played Super Metroid, and he did that in 2018, January 1st. And let's say we don't care about this, we just say something like this. I don't know what this converts to in actual time span, but who cares? Okay, so now we have actual test data that we can retrieve, and now we're going to actually start coding in Visual Studio.